Some cars can feel hard to really pin down. You digest the spec sheets and read the reviews, yet still it feels like you're only getting glimpses of what the car is all about. The new Audi RS5 is just such a car. Some seem to like it, some seem to loathe it, others don't appear to feel anything at all about it. So we thought we should spend some time with this elusive car and try to bring everything into focus.
I can completely understand why this car confuses people. Is it an RS? Isn't it an RS? Driving along normally like this in comfort mode, it really doesn't feel very RS at all. But let's take the individual components in order.
Let's start with the engine. Despite it being wonderfully smooth and eager to rev, there has been much chatter about the fact it is a turbocharged V6 and not a naturally aspirated V8. Admittedly, it doesn't have a spine-tingling yelp, but it doesn't sound unpleasant like a whinging teenager. The reduction in cylinders also means the V6 weighs 31 kilos less than the old V8, and as we'll see later, that's important when the engine's the thing leading the charge into corners. Some people have also griped that it is remarkably similar to the V6 in its little brother, the S5, albeit with 2 turbos instead of 1. And despite the added refinement and impressively swift shifts, some think that an 8-speed auto has no place in an RS.
With 444 brake horsepower and 442 pounds-foot of torque, what's not in doubt is the performance of this, as I shall now demonstrate. Left foot on the brake. No fuss, 0 to 60 miles an hour in about 3.5 seconds. Audi claims about 3.9, but everybody seems to have demonstrated that it will do it in much less than that.
Next up, the looks, which are very RS. The stance, the wheels, the aggressive lines, it's all a big step on from the rest of the rather dull A5 range. You gaze upon it and think it's a triumph for the RS styling department.
But then they go and do things like this, which are fake and serve no useful purpose. No holes in there.
How about the interior? Well, it's very nicely appointed, and you would be happy to spend many hours in here, comfortably crossing continents, or just sitting in traffic, wondering whether the other lanes are moving faster than you.
But while it's lovely, it's not particularly RS. Yes, there are badges here, 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 and here, but the actual things you want, like this, the drive select, that should be up here on the wheel, like in an R8, not sort of shoved away over there, apologetically and inconveniently. And another thing, where's this? All beautifully tactile. And this, cheap and plastic. It's an RS. The money should be spent on this, not this.
So what about the handling? Is that RS enough? Well, the suspension hardware is a 5-link setup at each corner. There's Quattro, as you'd expect, with a rear biased torque split of 40 to 60. As standard in the UK, the RS5 gets Audi's torque vectoring sport differential on the rear axle, while this car also has the optional RS Sport suspension with dynamic ride control. But what does all of this equate to on the road?
There's a temptation to approach this car, again, with a baggage of old Audi RSs and think that it's just going to be a fairly understeery, uninspiring lump. And initially, well, because the steering's not that quick and the ride is actually very supple in normal mode, you sort of think, yeah, it's just going to be pretty middle of the road. Lots of grip, no doubt, but not very good. But when you push this car harder, you can feel how much lighter the nose is now. And with the torque vectoring sport differential at the back, you get on the power really early in the corner and you can feel it accelerating that outside wheel. It also rides the bumps really well. I found that in dynamic mode for the suspension, it's just a little bit too firm, but if you notch it back in the individual mode to auto, that really helps. Comfort is, you get too little body control, but auto just works perfectly. It's a really impressive car, actually, this. When you take the time to get to know it, it can dissect a good bit of road in surprising fashion.
I think the reason that the RS5 can be confusing is that it doesn't cover the middle ground very well. It can play the big, quiet, soothing, everyday car extremely well. Equally, it can tackle a challenging road with real pace and poise if you push it hard, just as an RS should. But when you're only at about 6/10, it doesn't really engage and excite, and it can feel just a bit insipid. Once you know that it can do the really quick stuff, well, you're not so bothered that it doesn't shout and wriggle and writhe the rest of the time. You don't mind that it generally feels more S than RS, because you know that it can perform when required. But on initial acquaintance, until you know its hidden talents, it can feel like a bit of a letdown.
So what do we conclude about this car? Is it an RS? Yes, I think it is. Because, do you know what? The RS4, the RS2, the RS6, they've never been the most dynamically competent cars compared to their rivals, but we've loved them. I think the fact that this is a coupe body is what's always kind of got in the way of people judging it on its own terms. Audi now says it's a GT, and I think that's how it should always have been perceived, really. Think of the Conti GT. Wonderful car, ludicrously quick. Dynamically, not the best, but you love it because it's a brilliant GT car. I think the RS5 needs to be cut a bit of slack. This is a very good GT car that's surprisingly capable if you bother to push it hard.